The vast reaches of space stretched endlessly before the Zorathian fleet, a line of ships powerful enough to wipe out entire civilizations. The alien race had conquered and destroyed countless worlds, their weapons capable of turning planets into lifeless husks. They had seen all the galaxy had to offer, and they believed they had seen it all. Then one day they received a transmission from Earth. It was brief, simple, and full of nothing but challenge. A message that was almost laughable, coming from a world still crawling out of its primitive past. We are Earth. We do not bow to conquerors. Prepare for battle. The Zorathians had no reason to take the humans seriously. Earth was nothing more than a speck of dust in the grand scheme of the universe, a planet full of primitive creatures who had only recently learned to leave their atmosphere. The Zorathians had never felt threatened by humans until now. Their scans of Earth revealed something strange, an anomaly buried deep in the planet's forgotten history. The Vanguard, an ancient warship, abandoned long ago by humanity after a conflict that nearly destroyed them. The Zorathian fleet commander, Karanis, laughed when he first saw the data. This relic? A ship from an era when they barely understood space travel. He sneered. What a joke. He ordered his fleet to prepare for a quick strike, certain that this human warship, long thought to be useless, posed no real threat. This will be nothing more than a footnote in our conquest, he declared. But even as the Zorathians laughed, a small group of humans on Earth knew better. High Command had learned that the Zorathians were coming. They had no other choice but to activate the Vanguard, the only weapon capable of standing against the alien invaders. The decision was made in haste. Earth's leaders had little time. The ship was ancient, a relic of a time when humanity had dared to dream big, a time when they thought they could take on the stars. Now, after centuries of disuse, the Vanguard sat dormant on a remote asteroid, gathering dust. Inside the abandoned command deck, Captain Leela Hayes stood alone. She was young, but her resolve was ironclad. Humanity had been brought to the edge of destruction more times than they could count, and yet they always found a way to survive. She would make sure they survived this time as well. She studied the old, dusty control panels. The ship's systems were as ancient as the ship itself, but she knew it well. Her grandfather had once been a pilot for the Vanguard, and he had passed on his knowledge to her before he had died. Now it was her turn to take the helm. With a steady hand, Lila pressed the ancient buttons that would bring the ship to life. The hull trembled as the long-dormant engines began to hum. Slowly, the lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow on the metal walls. The air, once thick with dust, began to circulate, and the old warship started to come to life. The crew, a small group of hand-picked soldiers and engineers, took their positions. There was no time for training. They had to rely on their instincts and the vast knowledge of the ship's systems passed down through the generations. The engines roared to life with a sound that shook the asteroid itself, and the Vanguard slowly lifted off its resting place. It was no longer a relic of the past. It was the last hope of humanity. Lila sat in the captain's chair, her fingers dancing across the controls. The ship's ancient systems felt sluggish at first, but soon the old warship was gliding toward space. It moved with a power that belied its age. Its hull, scarred and worn, gleamed as the ship entered Earth's orbit, ready to face the Zorathian fleet. Meanwhile, the Zorathians were preparing for their attack. They had detected the human warship moving, but they were still convinced it was a joke. Their advanced weapon systems locked onto the Vanguard, and their guns powered up. Karanis gave the order to fire. The first blast of energy shot toward the Vanguard, a brilliant beam that could tear through anything in its path. But as the beam neared, it suddenly collided with a shimmering shield. The energy dissipated harmlessly into space. The Zorathians were stunned. "What is this?" one of the Zorathian officers cried. "Their shields are holding." Karanis clenched his fists. "They can't stop us. Fire again." This time, the Zorathian fleet unleashed a barrage of blasts, powerful enough to annihilate anything in their way. But the Vanguard's shields flared brightly once more, absorbing the energy with little effect. The warship's old systems, reinforced by the ingenuity of human engineering, were more powerful than the Zorathians had ever anticipated. Lila stood at the command center, Watching the exchange on the screens, she was calm and determined. The Zarathians might have had the numbers, the weapons, and the technology, but they underestimated one thing: humanity's resilience. She gave the order to return fire. The ancient weapons systems on the Vanguard roared to life. Massive guns, once thought to be obsolete, charged up and fired with a force that shook the space around them. The energy beam struck the first Zarathian ship, tearing through its shields and into its hull. The enemy ship exploded in a fiery burst of light. The Zarathians were thrown into disarray. "No," Koranis bellowed. "This cannot be happening. They are nothing." But the Vanguard was relentless. One by one, the Zarathian ships fell, torn apart by the ancient weapons. The human warship moved with surprising speed, its movements as graceful as they were deadly. The Zarathians began to retreat, but the Vanguard pursued, its guns firing relentlessly. In the final moments of battle, only one Zarathian ship remained, attempting to flee. But the Vanguard's engines flared, catching up quickly. With a final, powerful blast, the last Zarathian vessel was torn apart. The silence that followed was deafening. The Zarathian fleet had been shattered. Captain Leela Hayes looked out into space, the stars burning brightly against the void. Her heart pounded with victory, but she knew this was just the beginning. The warship had proven its power, but humanity's true strength lay not in weapons, but in their spirit, their refusal to give up, no matter the odds. The Zarathians have laughed at Earth's ancient Dreadnought, but they have learned the hard way that humanity's will is an unbreakable force. As the Vanguard began its journey back to Earth, Captain Lila knew that the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again.